welcome to a new badge. I've put the wrong graphic up there, I just realized, but this is a badge about lists, so I'll have to fix that later. Um, but this is about getting some help or understanding about what lists are. And I can do this all basically from Python. Um, and so we'll take a look at idle. So basically, when you have a variable, I always tell people imagine that this is a box labeled X and it stores one thing at a time. And so pretend like that's like the memory, right? Is the inside the computer's memory? It says, "Oh yes, they've assigned a box and it's called X, and I'm storing 5 in it right now." Um, but sometimes it gets annoying that a variable can only store one thing at a time. If you have a group of related things, let's just say you're going to the grocery store and you want to buy like 5 things. So you say grocery one equals milk, and grocery two equals oranges. And like every time you want to make a new one, you have to come up with a new variable, and it can get kind of annoying. And then when you want to print them, you have to print every single one of these out separately. And if you think about what I'm doing right here is I'm making a list of things, right? I'm like a grocery list. And so instead of having to make a new variable every single time, like you add something to your grocery list and you're like, oh, now I have to make a new variable. What you could do is you can actually make a list, and a list has these square brackets in it, and then anything inside these square brackets is a part of the list. So we could say, okay, I want to make a, grocery list here, and it's milk, eggs, oranges. What else do you buy? Bread, and so on and so forth. So now I have one variable and it's storing 4 things at a time. So it's kind of weird because it's like, how does the computer do that? Well, we don't have to worry about that right now. All we have to know is that we can create this and that we can give it a name. Any old variable name works that we normally would do. And then we put items in our list. Now, just as a sample, as another one, you can of course store numbers in a list too, right? It doesn't have to be strings. You could store numbers. What's interesting is you can actually mix. So you could store numbers, but then you could just suddenly switch to other variable types. And so you could store like everything in a list together if they are related. Like, why would I store these things together? That's hard to say. Um, but if I had some data about milk that I wanted to store, so I have milk, and the expiration date is on the 15th of April, and the amount of ounces is 32, and has it gone bad yet is false, and things like that. So as long as they're related, then it would make more sense. It's kind of silly to make a list of completely unrelated things. So, how do I use this, or what do I do with this? So, first of all, we can print this just like we can print other things. So, if I say print grocery, watch what happens here. I run this and save it, and it prints it like, here's your list. You asked me for the list, and here's the list. Notice it prints the colons, I mean, the square brackets. It prints the quotation marks, though it does change them to single quotation marks. It prints the commas. So everything that we just put in here, it prints. It's like, oh, you want to see it? Here it is. But more interestingly, is that we can refer to any item in the list. Everything in the list is ordered, it has an order to it. And so we can say we want to see item number 0, which is how it counts the first item. Just like if you've done strings, the first letter in the string is position 0. So now I have to just move this a minute. Oh, well, that was nice. I just said grocery 0. I didn't actually say print. So let's try that. Okay, so we printed milk, and now it gets rid of the quotes around it and stuff. It's like, there's the item that we want to print because we said print item 0, and of course we can do that for anything. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3. If I say I want to see number 4, and there is no number 4 because I forget that starts at 0, so bread is not number 4, bread is number 3. It gives me this error, list index out of range. So if you ever get something about out of range, that means you're printing one that doesn't exist. Or not just printing, but trying to refer to one that doesn't exist. So there we go. Like, that's how we can do it. Now, one more thing that you can do with lists is you can use for loops. Um, so you can say, just like I normally would for I could also say for item if I want, right? This is a variable. I can give it any name I want. And now instead of saying a range of something, which would be numbers, I can just say for every item in grocery, and I can do something with that item. So I could say print item. And there's other things, of course, we could do, but right now we're just focused on printing. And so now I don't even need to know how many items are in the list, except, I don't know how to print, but other than that. So I don't have to refer to them by number, although I could have, but now I can say, I want to see milk, I want to see eggs, oranges, and bread, and it will just print out each one. And when I add something to that list, oh yeah, I also wanted ice cream and Cheetos and cookies. Okay, I'm having, a problem now. But I add things to the list. I don't have to change anything in my code at all because I print my list, and so it's just going to print those things with the new things on it. And I go through my list and I say, look at every item in the list and print it. So without making any change to the actual code, I can see my updated list. And that's where the power of this comes through. Because imagine again if you added items to your grocery and you're like, I'm on my 50th item, grocery 50 equals, bananas. And then down here you'd have to be like, okay, now I want to print not item, but grocery 50. And every time you want to do something, you have to create another variable and print another variable. This is a lot easier than that. And so that's what makes lists really powerful and really cool to use. So that's the basics of them. Um, I can't think of anything else I haven't shown you. Obviously, there's a lot more we can do to lists than just print them. Um, I will show you one other thing, which is there's two ways to print a list. So here's way number one. I'm just going to go print method 2 to show you another way. I could say item in range, and then I have to know how many things are in my list, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So items in range 7, print grocery bracket I. So now I'm saying, like, give I a number and then print that number. So it starts out at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So does the exact same thing as the way before it. Except I cannot remember to put my parentheses yet. Someday I'm going to master that. Method 2 does the exact same thing. So why would you want to do it this way? You don't need to, except for one of the assignments that you're going to be given, because you want to go out of order and do them in a different order than just straight through. Then this becomes more handy because you can, of course, change this and say start at 0, go to 7, count by 2s or something like that. So if you needed to change the way you print, not just one at a time, but do something else, you can use that method. So that's the list basics. If I think of something I've forgotten to tell you, then you'll get that in a further one. There is one other piece we need to cover, which is some other things you can do with lists besides just create them. There's some other options of how to create them. So we'll be looking at that in the other video.